And I will be using theories of a Harvard professor that we collaborate with. His name is Robert Kegan. But I thought I'd do it in a more playful way today. So we'll be using music, we'll be using our bodies, and we'll be experimenting with different ways of creating meaning and understanding the world that we're in. So basically, to start with, we always have two processes running in parallel in our consciousness. And one process is the pure experience. It's us feeling this room, the heat of the room, the wind, how we sit, hearing my voice right now, hearing the other sounds. And then there is this process of creating meaning of what is going on. How do I make sense of this? And mostly we make meaning through storytelling, but that's not the only way to make meaning. Run in parallel. And sometimes, at least in burning communities, we focus a lot on the experience. And we can get very strong experience through breath work. But it's not always that we make sense from those experiences in a wiser way. So, is it the batteries or is it the cord? Okay. So, if I'm very still, will it work then? Okay. So Ken Wilber, a famous philosopher, he talks about waking up, growing up, cleaning up. And waking up is the experiential part. It's just like getting a strong experience. But growing up is also how do we make sense of the world? How do we make sense of what is happening? And actually, when you interview people on how grown up they are, in leadership development, they do interviews called subject-object interviewing. Many times you then inquiry about conflict. You ask a person, when was the last time you had strong emotions rising? When were you in conflict? And then you see, why was that so difficult? And then you ask this, why was that so difficult? And why was that hard? And why is that a problem? And through that, you can see how mature we are in our sense making. But I thought that I'll guide you through all the 5 stages of meaning making, and we'll try to experience them. And we go all the way from when we're born and we're kids, and we don't even have a language. And we see if we can make sense in more and more complex and mature ways together. So for our first mission, for us who are in this beautiful tent, please find a person that you're a little bit curious about. Hopefully sitting next to you, just grab somebody. Does everybody have a friend to play with? If you're alone, you can grab yourself. If you're online, just be there with your 2 hands, your 2 halves, your wills. Yeah, and what we're going to do is we're going to start with the first great meaning, which is very nonverbal. So I'd like you to just take the other person's hand and get some resistance, like in that. So you have some tension in your hands. Yeah. And what I would like you to do is, I'd like you to, I'm going to play a song. And even if you're alone, just have 2 hands with some pressure in between. and see if you can, if you're comfortable, closing your eyes, and throughout maybe 30 seconds, 1 minute while I play the song, push a little bit back and forth, play with the balance, and go into this intuitive, pre-verbal perspective. We all have that with us. And see, try to make sense of the situation, not in a story, but just physically, just pushing back and forth and seeing what is really happening here. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. Let go of the stories if you have any of them. Just be. Hey, welcome back. So, I mean, we never really leave this, right? This is always with us. We forget about it many times, and then our bodies start protesting in different ways, saying like, look, don't forget about me, I'm also here. Because in the later stages, we go more and more into our mind. And this is the stage which is pre-ego. I mean, we don't even have a concept of what is me and what is the other person. Some of you might have felt that in some sense, where you lose yourself in that experience of wholeness, right? But at some point when we're kids, we start to realize that there is a self, there is a me, and there is a world. And we become aware about our limbic systems, about our needs, our wants, whenever it's an ice cream or a toy or something that we want from the world. And as kids, we are quite egocentric. I don't know if you thought about it. Kids are they're not so, I mean, a lot is focused on what I want and how am I going to get it. On a sunny day, you might exchange your little sister or brother for an ice cream, right? It's a good deal. Well, sure, take him or her. Give me the ice cream. And when we grew up, many times we can almost be ashamed of this little egocentric self. I remember I had a small brother and we had to vacuum clean our apartment. And I found a solution because I mean we're supposed to share the responsibility, and I had this police handcuffs. So I thought if I put my little brother to the vacuum cleaner with the handcuffs, it's just a matter of time before he vacuum cleans also my part of the apartment. Of course, that didn't happen, and I got a lot of trouble from my parents. I would like you to remember a story when you were very egocentric in a childish way, and share that with your partner. Any story when you had this childish logic of like, this is what I want and I'm gonna get it. See if you can find a story from your, and if you can't, just listen to the other person sharing a story. And if you're alone, reflecting, see if you can remember, just put in words, write, make sense of the story from where you are today, but a story about you being egocentric as a kid. Please. Make sure to change. If you haven't changed, please change. Okay, start to round off your stories. Okay, I hope we found at least a few stories. And it's very cute when we're kids, right? And we're in this opportunistic mindset, right? It's not as cute when we're adults. So about 4% of the population have traumas in their childhood that makes them stuck, especially under stress, and go very soon back into this very egocentric perspective. Who here had a really terrible leader who was manipulating with fear, with anger, with shame? Who had that type of leadership? Experienced that in their lives sometimes. Almost everybody, right? And this is horrible because you can be very well functioning. You can be grown up in your problem solving. You can be very smart. But then under pressure, you could very quickly, if you have a trauma where you didn't feel that people would care for your needs. And then our strategies are very simple. We try to influence people by basic emotions. And strongest emotions are the negative emotions. We know that. So then you use fear, you use shame, you use guilt, you use anger to try to get people where you want. And if that is the case, it's not leadership development that helps, it's therapy. So you need to go back to those traumatic experiences and work through them so you don't degrade into these not so charming ways of managing the world, yourself, and the people around you. But most of us, we make this transition into the next era. We have mixed experiences, of course, with the adults, but we are safe enough to realize that if we only fulfill the expectations of our friends, of our teachers, of our parents, we are taken care of, right? So if we live in accordance to the norms and rules that are set around us, and they can be more or less healthy. I'm not saying it's healthy norms, healthy rules. It can be different norms. We then will be safe, we'll be taken care of, and we will belong, which is one of the strongest motivations that we have as humans. And we start to get into what Kegan calls the socialized mind. So we began, if you felt like the energy, there was this buzzing energy when you were speaking about this, you're very much in touch with your body, with your emotions, right? You were smiling, laughing. It was almost hard to get you back. And what happens is we start living more from the mind. We start seeing ourselves from the outside. It's almost like a consciousness of how do I look? How does this look? How do others perceive me? So social image becomes really, really important. And this is usually in the teens or early teens. And we start to try to navigate the game to get points, to win points in this social system. The very sad part here is that most adults get stuck in this level of consciousness. So according to Kegan's research, around 60% never really leave that state of consciousness. The game becomes just more complex. The corporate politics or whatever games we're playing, but we're still seeing ourselves from the outside. And there's 3 strong leadership shadows that we can see also. I mean, when we are under stress or things become complex, either we become pleasing and we try to avoid conflict. Oh, no, let's solve this, let's do this. I can adapt and we can change that. And see which one you recognize yourself in, because we all have one. Or you become more controlling. So when shit goes down, you go like, I know the way. This is how we do it. Stop that. And you try to be certain. So you try to tackle that uncertainty or conflict with very much certainty. Or the third way, that is also very common, is that you withdraw and complain. So you don't want to be part of the system. I knew that this would never work, right? So I don't know even what you people are doing here. You know, this is not just. I'm not going to be part of this. And evolutionary, actually, if you think about it, this makes sense. I mean, imagine a very strange situation. There is some huge animal showing up here. It's good if some people take strong leadership and say, well, let's gather some stones and let's just run and kill this. And some of the pleasing, okay, I'll gather the stones. And it's also really, really wise that some of you guys would go like, I'm not hunting that beast, you know. You go and you try, but I'm not doing that, you know. So it's a very good mechanism. But what happens in the socialized mind is that we live a lot from our image, how we want to be perceived. We live a lot from the mind, and this mechanism can be running us a huge part of our time. So then we are a lot in the controlling or pleasing and always trying to avoid conflict, and like conflict is bad and I'm always compromising with myself and I feel in between. Or I'm always complaining, withdrawing, I'm not happy with anything, you know, like. And none of these strategies is really healthy. If you measure happiness in people, it correlates very strongly with their level of meaning making. If you're in a socialized mind, you could be in a socialized mind, you could be happy, a few hundred years ago in a fishing village, when we had one priest, one religion, there was very strict norms, and everybody could conform to that. But in the postmodern world today, we have so many values, we have so many different perspectives. So if you try to be socialized, either being very certain or withdrawing or being pleasing, you are always stuck in between. You're never fully satisfied. You're always a bit shattered. And you feel that you're not enough. You need more. And the whole consumption society builds on that, right? So a lot of the researchers in consciousness development, they say we need to take another step forward. But before we do that, I would like you to share a story of your not so charming adult self. When were you the last time pleasing and trying to avoid a conflict and made it even worse by doing so? Or trying to be very certain and controlling, and that was not helpful? Or just withdrew and started? Which is your favorite strategy? Is it this withdrawing? Is it controlling? Is it being pleasing? And how does that make it worse for you? Please. And if you're alone, journal, write, reflect. What's your favorite socialized mind strategy? How does that make things worse?
So I'm running like one session out today. Yeah. How does it work? Like, should I bring my computer or share screen or something like that?
I just wanted to invite the people that are online that feel like sharing. We can speak. They can't hear us at the on-site. So we can also use voice.
Yeah.
To do these exercises.
Do you want the cameras to film you? Or yeah. Because I think the ease, or you have a screen share as well for your computer. It should work with your computer, but these inputs are like HDMI, and I don't know which year your computer is from. Because if you have a newer computer, you won't be. And if you send you the slides or something, yeah, I think that's the. You have AirDrop in your computer? Yeah, cool. So I can maybe just AirDrop you. Yeah. Yeah, so I can use my computer to see the slides. Because I want to really check there's some notes there, I can use mine, and you can share, and then we can.
Listening to another conversation, or is someone sharing? I'm confused.
Yeah. It's from the keys, where it's bleeding through microphones.
Okay.
So I just muted them, so we'll see if I need to push them to mute us back. Yeah.
So they can't hear us.
They can't hear us. No.
Okay. Well, I can share quickly what came to mind, and I think it comes back in a lot of situations at work, and I've found the hotspot of the what's recurring, and when something feels scary and very new at work, I often become a bit too critical. It's always good to be critical, but I think I can become a bit too questioning and critical because the step feels so scary to get out there and start the new task or new project or process. So that's something I have to watch with myself. Question myself, questioning something too much, and then I realize, oh, I'm there again. I'm scared.
Yeah, I can also share from the other day. Just talking to my wife, she had a question, and she really didn't want it. She really didn't want it solved. That brought me into some sort of uncertainty, and so I started solving the problem. Very assertive, very this is what we should be doing, and this is how you should be doing and feeling, and all of that stuff. It didn't really end well. That's my pattern.
Thank you for sharing.
I'm trying to have a look at different situations. There is like, I have the feeling that in different situations, there are different strategies. It's not just one systematic avoiding. It depends on the situation. I can see that. But if I would have a look, it would be more of a controlling kind of way when I get caught.
So one of the
more like
most famous
analyzing.
books of Kegan,
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend it to anybody I like. It's called In Over Our Heads. It's very thick and quite complex, but he talks about how our sense making does not allow us to feel well in the society that we're in today. That we're trying to make sense in a way that is modernistic, basically, like what is the right answer here? Like there is one for everybody. And then we're fighting with perspectives instead of listening. And that mindset creates a lot of suffering, unnecessary suffering. And actually it's very interesting because he says, you know, there is a lot of conflict many times in hospitals because like the top of the modernistic mind is like the doctor, right? You come to the hospital and they will find the diagnosis and they will find the cure, and this is the how to solve it. And in some senses, of course, we've made huge advancements, and it's beautiful what we see, how that we can live longer, we can cure much more diseases. But in the social world, the same paradigm also creates a lot of challenges. I think you've seen, like at Karolinska and many others, there is management problems in many hospitals. And it's that mindset where there is an outer answer. You had a reflection? No, you just had a finger up. So, and here there is a big transition that most adults never make. I mean, and we live a lot in our mind, we live a lot in the outer world, we live a lot through trying to fix things outside of us. And here again, there is a transition going inward. And a lot of the movement, the burner communities, the hippie movement is, of course, looking inside and going back to our hearts. And here the solution, if we look to science, is to define and live in accordance to your values, using your experiences to draw something out of them. And in the most complex ways, I mean, if you remember, there's two processes, right? We have the experience and then we have the sense maker. And from all the experiences, if we boil it down to something, we could find a few values that we could learn from that. That's how we reduce complexity. If you're part of something that is challenging, I moved around a lot when I was a kid. My parents are from Ukraine and I changed schools. And for me, it was quite hard because kids are not always nice to you. You know, when you come to a new school, it's not like, oh, welcome. So for me, once I made sense of it more as an adult, I realized that welcoming people is really important. Because when you don't know anybody, you're not certain in that context. So I've been involved a lot in the university in like welcoming international students. You know, I was like ahead of that. Like throughout my life, I seek myself to communities that are open, that are including, and that gives me a lot of energy, right? So it's an experience that I had that I made sense of. And out of that, I boiled it down to some values of inclusion, of welcoming, of community, of belonging. And I realized, oh, that's important to me. And I try to live and create that. So if we look at people that are self-authoring, as Kegan calls it, they are aware that we are creating our story. A lot of the experiences that we see here
is helping us to become more self-authoring, to set an intention, to learn something from our experiences that is unique, individual. It doesn't have to be the same for everybody, and to live in accordance to that. The whole third wave, cognitive behavioral sciences, KBT in Swedish, are based on acceptance commitment therapy. Basically defining your values, accepting difficult emotions that will rise, and taking steps in a valued direction. It's very simple in one sense, but also it takes a lifetime to master. And what Kegan says is each transition, there is no quick fixes. It takes about 5 years. Once you start something, it takes 5 years until you integrate that fully. And I would like you, first of all, I would like you to listen to this song, because for many people, there is this realization. Once you come to this point where you realize, oh my God, wait, it's me creating the sense and the meaning. I can create, I mean, not whatever meaning, but I have a lot of choice in what stories I create out of the experiences that I have. And once you understand that, you can also understand that I can actually choose my experiences. So there is this positive spiral of well-being and of co-creating your own life and creating the love, the needs that you want. And it's brilliant what Nils said in the opening, that what you need is what you want to give, right? So just listen to this song for a few minutes, and I want you to think about an experience in your life when you actually did something that was brave, when you took an experience and you understood something out of it, and then you maybe created a value out of it and how you lived that. And of course, Stevie Wonder here is talking about ourselves, right? It's not somebody outside. So see if you want to share a story when you did something brave or did something in accordance to your inner compass or values. Just one short story from your life. And if you're online, again, see if you can write down a story.
Someone want to share?
This is so much harder.
I can share. So something that is in line with how I want to live and how I want to, like, something that makes me proud is when I interact with strangers. So if I ask if someone needs help in the subway, or I pass a woman who seems lonely or perhaps maybe in need of help, but it's not that clear. So I always feel proud of myself when I ask, because often they say no, but then they're always happy that someone interacted, tried, saw them. So that's something that always feels good and makes me feel in line with what I would like to do.
I think the most courageous one, but I not 100% it would should be called courageous because there was no alternative to doing something else. The pain was so huge, but I knew that if I go there, there might be a solution. Was when I went against my own conviction of who I was, and my thought was, I can never love my brother's suicide, and I dare to step into that inquiry, knowing that on the other side of that, I would land up in, I can always love my brother's suicide. And just that idea itself, being that person that loved her brother's suicide, was so, it was like a completely taboo. But the pain was so strong that I just wanted to go for that inquiry. And I did it. And then I understood what love really is. So I, because I wanted to back out, you know, not do that. No, that's not. No, I'm not going there. But then I went. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like where there is a lot of resistance, you can find love
Okay,
by
start
being
rounding off your
courageous.
stories.
Maybe courageous is just a strong energy of it's not possible to do anything else than this.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And it also comes up with principled ways of doing something. I resonate with what you were saying, Karin, as well, that I feel a sense of pride whenever I engage with another person, or like I dare to see them, stop and see them. I'm almost thinking about,
All right, welcome back
yeah,
again.
that stuff. Let's get back to that later.
So when we leave the
Thank you for
socialized
sharing.
mind,
Thank
there is a
you.
fear of losing the people closest to us. There is a fear of losing contact, losing the world around us when we follow our inner path. And everybody feels that, I think. It's a fear of losing what we've been working for our earlier life. There's a fear of losing old friends, losing our parents, losing everybody around us. And it's very strong. It's the sense of wanting to belong, wanting to be part of a group. And people have done the stupidest things in history of mankind to keep the belonging to the group, right? We've also done some of the best and wisest things to contribute to the group. And this transformation, which it is, it's like a death. It's an old self that is dying, an old sense making, and something new that is being born. For some, it's very gradual and very gentle. For some, it's much more dramatic. For some people, this happens in their late teens. It's possible. For most people, it doesn't happen until they're 40, 40-ish. And then once you become more safe in your career, in what you have accomplished, and you start feeling that life is meaningless. And you start questioning things, and then you start off on your journey, which is troublesome because then we are not self-authoring until we're something like 45, which is quite late. And then we have a lot of bad management. And it's only 30% of the people that make this journey. But this is not the final step of sense making. It's beautiful people that are self-authoring and grounded in their values. They're much healthier, much less sick and burnout. They are fun to be around because there is this live and let live attitude. I'm not trying to force my values on anybody else. I've done my journey. I know what is important to me, and you have to do yours, right? And so there is not one truth that is put onto everybody, and that is a lot correlated with good leadership. So then you're not threatened by somebody being more smart or more brave or more creative than you. You're just like, oh wow, that's inspirational, right? And you wanna learn from that. And in socialized mind, there's a lot of fears, there's a lot of competition, there's jealousy, there is all these negative emotions that are based on insecurity. And we're not free from that. It's still there, but we make it our own. We own it much more. We take care of that, right? Just like Stevie Wonder, there is somebody who will never abandon me, and it's me. I can take care of my shit, right? But then what Kegan says is the best leaders are transformational leaders. They are the system thinkers who see systems and think paradigmically. And for that, it's not enough. I mean, most of the leaders that we see today that are like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, they're very strong self-authoring. They are the heroes of their companies, right? They are the ones building the whole thing. They are the ones that want to be on stage. They are the ones who are showing the way with their values. But those leaders who make the biggest changes in the world are not self-authoring. They're self-transformative in their way of thinking. And what does that mean? Basically, once you become very secure in your values and you have lived them and you know that you can create a good life, you start to become truly curious about the otherness. I mean, because you understand that any value system is limited. I mean, as humans, we can hold about 20 values that we play with. And in any given moment, we make choices out of 7 plus minus 2 values. That's the cognitive limitation. No matter how brilliant you are, it's not more than 9 processes in your head going on simultaneously. So there is an understanding that whatever values I have and experiences, they will always be insufficient. They will always be partial. And there is this deep humility, being humble that I don't know everything. I can't know everything. I need other people to see the full picture. And there is deep curiosity and listening in that. And what is funny is that Kegan says, I'm sure it's possible for people to reach this earlier, but out of the thousands of measurements of all the exceptional people that they have done, they have never seen a person in a self-transforming, meaning-making system below 50 years. And that's why we need the elders. I mean, I'm sure, he says, I'm sure it's possible. I mean, we had Buddha, we had Jesus, we had some others who in very early years came to this very strong sense-making system. But for most of us, it starts when we're 50, and it's only 1% or less than 1% that do this journey. What they also see in research is that our early experiences matter a lot for wisdom. There is a disputation on wisdom, and what they have seen is that our experiences between the age of 25 and 35 have a huge impact on which type of life we will continue to live, and if we are to develop the capacity for wisdom and truly transformative thinking. And a transformative thinking, which is beautiful there, I mean, a story that Kegan told me that had a huge impact on myself. There was a big conflict in New York between the church, the Catholic Church that is strong there, that is against abortion, of course, and the liberals. and some of the liberal activists were, there was a fight, and there was even people killed in between these movements. And so what they did was that they decided, some of the highest people from this church decided to meet once a month some of the leaders from the liberal movement, and just to talk for 2 or 3 hours. Each month, they booked 2 or 3 hours. And they have been doing that for 2 or 3 years. And then all these conflicts start to stop, and and there's all this transformation happening. And then there is this news anchor that gets this story, and they want them on TV. And then they put them in the sofa, and they said, so you've been meeting for 3 years each month for like 3 hours just to speak and try to understand each other. And they're like, yes. So you must have come much closer in your perspectives. And I'm like no. And the TV anchor goes blank. She doesn't know what to say. So it's this awkward silence. And then they have to facilitate the dialogue themselves, because you see that she's in shock. Because she doesn't know how to take the conversation further. So she says, and then they start to talk about like what actually goes on, and she still sits there, and so some kind of, and what they discuss is like, it's not that they move their positions in any way. It's just that their sense of self become much broader to be able to include and hold and understand that tension. And what is beautiful in the self-transforming mind, and I mean, we can get an intellectual understanding of a lot of this, and this has been my life journey of trying to understand this intellectually, but it's not the same thing as feeling and making sense and making meaning out of it. I mean, we can have moments of more complex meaning making, but it's not the same when I'm in conflict with somebody I love, that I am like those wise people that are self-transforming, right? But what happens is that you have a different view on tensions. It's like this understanding that all living systems have tensions, like a cell, there's tension in a cell. And whatever question you have, there's always another side of it. And it's not being relativistic and like going to the things doesn't matter. It's all depending on what perspective you have. Not at all. But it's understanding that whatever value we choose, we always sacrifice something else. So there is this pain of losing in each choice that we make. And understanding that for whatever I choose, I lose out on something, and there is another side which I can hold and understand more deeply. For those who are interested in the self-transforming mind, it deserves an hour or hour and a half just for that. Tomorrow or the day after, we will be doing the glass bead game, which is based on Hermann Hesse, who got the Nobel Prize for his novel, The Glass Bead Game. And it's a consciousness development game that you play with words and dance and music. That Lawrence Curry Clark, which is a young and brilliant philosopher, developed, and a dear friend of mine. And they will be hosted both online, and we'll be doing a physical one here. But just to feel a sense of the self-transforming mind, we will listen to a song, and this is one of my favorite by Van Morrison. Okay. Are there many people?
When that foghorn blows, I will be coming home. Yeah, when the foghorn blows, I wanna hear it. I don't have to fear it, and I wanna rock your gypsy soul. Just like way back in the days of old. Yeah, magnificently we will fold into the mystic.
All right. Welcome back. So that was a short run through on the 5 systems of meaning making that we all have. The first one is the physical one, almost instinctual. And that is, of course, everything is happening in the body. So it's our holder. And a lot of the bodily aches and pains we're getting from the other troubles are stored in our body. So it's a beautiful signal for us to feel in and see where the tensions are. Some of the tensions that we can hopefully understand with a self-transformative, more mature mind of seeing and holding perspectives, tensions between values. We have our playful, childish, egocentric, emotional, limbic self, right? Let's not forget that little kid. A lot of the leaders, some of the most inspiring leaders that I've met in my life, they are very much in touch with that childish sense. And you can see it in their eyes. You know, some adults, they're like gray, they're lost their inner child. But actually many of the CEOs, many of the people who can inspire people to move, to take on great projects, great challenges, they are in touch with that childish sense, because that's where the limbic motivation comes in, right? And that's where you can touch people deeply through that. We do need our socialized mind. I've been giving it some bad rap today. It doesn't deserve that, because we don't want a society that is just childish. We want some rules and structures. We need that to be safe. But we need to reflect on those rules and structures so that we have them and they don't have us. We have the self-authoring mind, where we clarify our values and our purpose, which is some of the most important tools, personal tools that you can be doing. Working a lot with accepting and feeling the emotions, so we are not falling back into the either withdrawing, right? Complaining, judging, or being pleasing, trying to compromise on ourselves or others, or becoming controlling and becoming certain when actually we're not. And we have the self-transcendent, where a lot of it is also spiritual. I mean, many of us have had taste of that self-transcendence, but it's also a way of being and living that some people over their 50s fully integrate and live from that space. So I'll be happy to take 5 minutes of reflections, questions, thoughts, whatever I know. I'll do my best from the stuff I've read to just reflect and answer. Thanks for coming. Oh yeah, sure. Okay, so it's 1 o'clock. Thanks for joining.